You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What is up? Welcome into this week's edition of KCSNU Kickoff here on the KCSNU YouTube channel. Appreciate you joining in. Appreciate you watching this fine program here that we have to offer. Today, I am joined with Maddie Lane. Matt, you were so courageous, and you did this whole show yourself last week. So thank you very much while I was under the weather, dealing with the battle of the flu. Still might have a little sniffles, sneezels, coughs into the microphone. So I apologize if that does happen. But Maddie, how are you doing?
You know, I'm good. I'm going to blame you not being here. My throat's now been a little sore since I had to do this whole show solo last week. So this is I'm kidding. My throat is sore, but we're feeling pretty good. I've made it. I'm here. I'm surviving, and we got a week of college football. Maybe not the best week. Maybe a little bit of a letdown after last week's insane big games, but a good week here set up for us.
A full slate. We got a full 7 games that we're going to be talking about. 3 local games. 3 on our watch schedule, and 2 wildcards. That's 8. Doing the math in my head, that is more than 7. So, Maddie, let's start off with the one big thing. Do you have anything from this last week of college football? And I think I know what it's going to be.
I do. Our Horned Frogs are in the college football playoff at number 4. And I am absolutely befuddled at how this happens. I don't understand the logic that one-loss Alabama was better than TCU as of a week ago, but now all of a sudden one-loss Tennessee, who beat that one-loss Alabama team earlier in the year, is now not better than TCU, as TCU's win over Texas Tech, if anything, lowered their strength of schedule, because Texas Tech, while maybe not a bad team, hasn't been great. So TCU's strength of schedule technically got worse. So how all of a sudden is now Tennessee seen as a lesser team than what Bama was a week ago? I can't track it. I don't understand. I'm not upset. Our Horned Frogs, I got the Huskies shirt on, but our Horned Frogs, they're purple as well. I can just tape a frog over this and we're set. That has kind of been Tucker and I's adopted team, I think, throughout this season. So I'm happy to see them at number 4 here. I just was very surprised that it happened.
I agree. It happened naturally too, our adoption of TCU. It started one time like, what is this team doing? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we really like this team. Looking at the first 4, it'd be Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU. Those are your 4 college football playoff teams, with Tennessee, Oregon looking at the 5 and 6, LSU at 7, USC at 8, Alabama at 9, Clemson at 10. Clemson got it handed to him last week from Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that I thought wasn't very good. Maybe they are kind of better than I thought they were. Now, 2-loss Alabama sits a spot ahead of Clemson with LSU. 2-loss LSU at number 7. I know they beat Alabama, but
and Ole Miss, they got quality wins.
That's true. They do.
They got blown up. 2 more quick things in the college football playoff. How USC is in the top 10 and UNC isn't when they have essentially the exact same resume, mind-boggling. Like, USC's loss is slightly better, but Notre Dame has now beat Clemson. They're ranked again too. So both of them have one loss to a ranked opponent and have beat nobody else worth mentioning. Thought that was kind of fascinating. And then the reason that I thought TCU would stick at 5 and Tennessee would stay at 4, Michigan and Ohio State got to play each other, right? One of them naturally has to drop out of the top 4. There was your window to put TCU, who, if they were still undefeated, up. I didn't think they would do it before that game. So that's kind of what adds to the surprise of me being there. But yeah, USC, get USC down with UNC or UNC up. Like, those two can't be that far apart. They're the exact same resume.
I agree. UCLA, get them up too, because it's kind of the same thing.
They should be ahead of USC. Yeah, they should be ahead of USC.
Agree.
They have much better wins, and the loss maybe by more points, but Oregon's better than Utah. What a USC,
it's
man.
True.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah. It's the bias, the big brand bias with USC. But yeah, some interesting rankings coming there. All 4 teams in the college football playoff right now undefeated. They're 9-0. So maybe we should just go back to the BCS then, if that's how it's going to be. I'm just messing around. Let's get into our picks for Maddie. Last week, you had a winning week, 4-3, I believe, is what your week was. But we got to update the rankings The overall record, I'm 31-18-2. Did not have picks last week as I was out. Matt is now 27-29-2, inching ever so close to that 500 mark.
Listen, I made up a game. I got a game over 500. I made up one game on my season. That's all we're chasing. We're just chasing 500 now. So we're turning the hat backwards, putting the sunglasses on. We're going Chris Moneymaker on him right now. We are getting to 500 by the end of this year.
That track starts now as we get into the local slate of games. Number 23, Kansas State travels to Waco, Texas to take on Baylor. This is a 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. local time game on Fox Sports 1. What do you think about this matchup, Maddie?
So a couple weeks ago, I would have said this is like an easy K-State win, right? K-State was playing really well. Baylor wasn't playing so well. They were coming off that loss, that blowout, not blowout, but like a high-scoring loss at West Virginia. And it didn't look great, but now Baylor's put together some wins, and they've won their last 3. A couple of them have been close. So like, it's not like they're blowing teams out, but they look more competent. You're getting a little bit of that Dave Aranda Baylor defense in there. So they're kind of peaking at the right time. And on the other side, you have K-State, who just seems very up in the air. They tried to put Adrian Martinez back out there this past week, and it was a mistake. But then, he's throwing to wide open guys because Texas's defense isn't very good in the back end. So when he had the protection, which wasn't frequently, but when he did, he was hitting wide open guys with very inaccurate passes. I don't know what K-State's doing. If I knew that Will Howard was going to play, I think this is huge for them, right? But the fact that they seem to want to play Adrian Martinez and Baylor playing better, I think that makes this game kind of shape up to be pretty good. And it is in Waco, Texas. It's on the road for them. So should be a hard-fought game of two teams that are kind of going somewhat different directions. And I know K-States are based around the injuries, but they're kind of going different directions in the season right now.
Absolutely. What's really interesting, you can check out the in-depth breakdown over in this corner for the K-State. Those guys dive into it a little bit more than we will here. But what I think is interesting about K-State is I think they're trying to save the red shirt for Will Howard. I think that's what they're trying to do, which seems a little maybe not the right choice, because I think in the couple games that he's played, he's definitely outplayed Adrian Martinez. Outside of the Oklahoma game, which was Adrian Martinez's probably best game that I think he's had at K-State. I think that Will Howard's played the best. And when you look at the Big 12 standings right now, TCU obviously at the top, they're 9-0. They haven't lost a game. Then there's a whole bevy of 2-loss teams when you talk about Baylor, Texas, Kansas State, and Kansas kind of really in it too with a 3-loss. I mean, how close are they in it? We'll see. But there's a good chance that a team with 3 losses could get into the Big 12 championship, just with the way that the schedule kind of shakes out. Does Texas still have to play Baylor, or they've already played this year?
I don't know off the top of my head. They might. I think the surprising thing for K-State trying to save, I guess, Will Howard's red shirt, if that's what they're doing, they were a 1-loss Big 12 team. They had the second most clear track to the Big 12 championship game. If they made a decision to try to save a red shirt and cost themselves a chance to win that, like, now they need help, right? They do need a little bit of help to get to the Big 12 championship game now. Well, I mean, I guess, they definitely need help. They need TCU to beat Texas. Because TCU's going regardless. They need TCU to beat Texas. So, like, that's a weird decision by them to put Martinez out there and then to never make the switch throughout the game when it was clear Martinez was not going to pull it off.
Before we get to your prospects to watch, Texas still does have to play Baylor. Kansas State plays obviously Baylor this week, but then they've already played the 2 teams at the top with TCU and Texas. And then after they play Baylor, they get that out of the way. So if they beat Baylor, they do have a pretty decent shot of
that Kansas game gets important, right? Like that Kansas game comes into play too.
Yes, it gets very important. I think this is the first time in a long time I'd have to find the tweet that both of these teams have 6 wins going into a Sunflower Showdown, which is a game that's been sold out. So I'm standings watching for the Big 12 because I think it's going to get real close. It's going to get real hot coming down the stretch here. So Maddie, who are you watching prospects wise in this game?
So it's been a minute since we've talked about him, so I think it's time to come back. K-State's, Deuce Vaughn gets a lot of hype, and he might be one of their best players. Like, don't get me wrong here, but I still have my money on Felix Anudike-Uzomah being their best player overall, or at least their best prospect for the NFL. Playing defensive end, he's one of the 2 best defensive linemen or defensive players in general in the entire Big 12. We're going to talk about the other one here in a second. So I think this is a game where he kind of needs to take over. He needs to play a big part in this game. His impact needs to be felt. So then for Baylor, across from him, we've talked a couple times about Baylor's left tackle this year and Connor Galvin. But on the other side, Gavin Byers, he got inserted into the lineup. I believe it was about week 3 or 4 this year. And it's just, you can tell he adds a lot, especially to their run game. His size, his power, and his strength. It matters over there on the right side for Baylor to get a run behind him and what he's able to do specifically as a run blocker. A little, less seasoned as a pass protector, but he's still good. So that matchup on either side for Felix is going to be big. And Baylor doesn't love to throw the ball around, but they will drop back and throw it, plenty of times with Blake Shapen. You got to give him a chance to get after the passer. He could have a big role in this game. And so will Baylor's tackles trying to stop him.
Absolutely. Big matchup there. Kansas State dogs in this game. Not surprised going on the road. Road game's always tough. A 2.5-point favorite for Baylor. Here's a fun little nugget, Maddie. Each of Baylor's last 6 games have gone over the total points line, that over set at 52. And the road team has covered the spread in each of the last 6 games between Kansas State and Baylor. Very interesting statistics heading into your pick here. So what do you got?
I am going to go K-State. I still think that K-State's the better team. I don't know who's going to start at quarterback. I assume it's going to be Martinez. And if that's the case, I'm going to have to sweat it out a little bit. But getting the points, having the chance to where they could technically lose on a 2-point conversion or, less than they could lose by less than the field goal and still cover. I will take them in this one.
I like Kansas State in this one as well. I personally think Kansas State is the better team. But I'm with you on the quarterback situation. It's been very interesting to see what they've done, what they do with the quarterback situation. But I'm going to take Kansas State and the points. Now, let's talk about the other team in the state of Kansas, the Kansas Football Jayhawks. They travel to Lubbock, Texas. This is also a 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern game. This is going to be on ESPN Plus. Big matchup. Kansas versus Texas Tech. Maddie, when we were talking about bowl eligibility for the Hawks, they've already got it. That kind of monkey is off their back, so to speak. This was probably the last game on the schedule that I would have circled and said, hey, Kansas State could probably get this one here and get bowl eligible, but they were able to get it last week against Oklahoma State, an Oklahoma State team that's been absolutely battered and beat up by injuries. I feel bad for that team. But what are your thoughts on this Kansas Texas Tech matchup?
So Texas Tech is 4-5 on the season, which, isn't great, but under first-year head coach and new staff, that's not terrible. And then you go through and look at their games. The only game that they've lost in a very competitive Big 12 by more than 10 points was that game versus Baylor. And if I remember right in that game, they went through all 3 of their quarterbacks, some injuries, some bad play went through. It was a very bad game for a Texas Tech team that goes for it on 4th down. They will turn the ball over if you're stopping them, and they clearly had an off day. So if you kind of toss that game out, they're playing Oklahoma State within 10 points, K-State within 9 points, TCU within 10 points. NC State, before Dennis Leary got hurt, was, I guess, a 13-point loss, so just outside 10. But they play good teams very close. They beat Texas earlier in the year. So they're a quality team, despite what the record says. I don't know if there's a huge gap between them and Kansas right now. I think Kansas is a better football team, but I don't know if there's a huge gap in between the two in terms of their talent. I just think that Texas Tech, is another year or 2 away from getting to that point. So this should be a fun matchup of 2 rising Big 12 squads that should return the vast majority of their rosters next year.
Absolutely. And I do think Tech has played in a lot of, Maddie, as you mentioned, a lot of competitive games. They're a team that I like to pick when it comes down to very close games, money line, live money line on Texas Tech. I got on that, I think, when they played Texas earlier this year. That was a good team that I was able to capitalize on. But the way that they play close with a first-year head coach, the way that they have that, I think is very encouraging for that program overall. I do think that they're probably a couple years away from being competitive for the Big 12, but I think Kansas and Texas Tech are very similar in that regard. They've got a lot of young guys. They're bringing back a lot of young guys. Kent Swanson lets us know how many of the guys that they're bringing back on Kansas's team next year on their two deep, and Texas Tech is in the same situation. So I'm very curious to see how this matchup comes up. I think it's a close game. I think this is a very close game, and you can go check out on this corner over here. Kent Swanson breaks it down with Brendan McAnderson, former Jayhawks running back, sideline reporter for him. Now he breaks down this game with them. Make sure to go check that out over there. But Maddie, who are some of the prospects you're looking for in this game?
So I had mentioned it earlier, right? With Felix being one of the better Big 12 defensive players, the best prospect in all of the Big 12 right now is Tyree Wilson, defensive end edge player for Texas Tech. 6'6", 275 pounds. And if you watch Tech versus TCU last week, he almost single-handedly won the game for Texas Tech. Their offense got shut down in the second half, or they win this game. And a lot of it has to do with how well he's playing. He's on track to be a top 20 pick in the draft. Like, he's just climbing up draft boards right now, but he's athletic freak out there. He's hard to miss at 6'6", 275 pounds. He kind of stands out when you're not talking about the cream of the crop Big 12 program. So he's easy to spot. For Kansas, I could pick an offensive tackle, but I think more importantly, Jalen Daniels or Jason Bean, whoever's playing quarterback, nobody knows, their mobility is going to be huge. Tyree Wilson's going to get pressure. The Texas Tech does a good job scheming him up free rushes, and then he can just straight up beat a tackle. So he's going to get pressure. It's going to be up to the quarterback and their mobility to get away from him. So kind of that cat and mouse game, because he's not an easy guy to get by with the wingspan and the speed. He's kind of everywhere. So those quarterbacks avoiding pressure from Wilson is probably going to play a role, because I don't think Kansas has the same offensive firepower as TCU. If Tyree Wilson has the same impact he did as last week, Kansas isn't going to come up and win this game the way TCU was able to.
Absolutely. Texas Tech favored by 3.5 points at home. So they're getting more than a field goal at home. Kansas has covered the spread in each of its last 6 November road games against non-AP ranked teams. So let marinate on that one. And also this over underline, Maddie, set at 64. Both of these teams do like to score points. 9 of Kansas's last 10 road games have gone over the points line. Over 64 is a big one. Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock averages 65.4 points per game, and over-under record at 4-1. Now, we don't pick the over-under here. I just thought that those were interesting numbers to throw out there. Kansas plus 145 on the money line, 3.5-point dogs. What do you have, Maddie?
Easy Kansas bet. Kansas has been good to us betting all year. Yeah. I don't know why Texas Tech is favored in this game. I don't actually understand that line. I think they're better. And if you flip this to KU being favored by 3.5, I would consider it, because I think it will be close, but there's no way I believe that Texas Tech, whose quarterback play isn't as good at whoever's playing for KU, is going to win by 3.5 in this game. So yeah, give me the Jayhawks.
I could see it being a little closer just because it's in Lubbock, right? Home field advantage. It probably does factor in a little bit, but getting more than a field goal is something that I like, especially. So I'm taking Kansas to 3.5 as well. They can lose by a field goal and still be okay in terms of covering. So I think that is a smart pick there. Now, Maddie, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this next game here. Let's be honest. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on it on Mizzou. That's who, because we know what's going to happen as number not ranked Missouri travels to number 5 Tennessee. For an 11 a.m. kickoff, noon kickoff if you're on the East Coast, on CBS, for an absolute little bloodbath going for Tennessee. This is going to be a good game for Tennessee to get their backups in, see what they got going. I'm going to go ahead and say Tennessee favored by 20 points in this game. Maddie, thoughts and prospects?
Okay, thoughts. This seems like a pretty good trap game for a Missouri team who's been playing better, right? This seems like a game where Tennessee expects the Tigers to come into town and be able to be a pushover. Missouri comes in with a chip on their shoulder. Missouri fans and maybe players like to think this is some kind of rivalry. It's not, but they like to think it is. And so maybe there's a little bit there, and they can make it ugly and maybe upset them. The problem is Tennessee's still fighting for a playoff spot right now. A one-loss Tennessee team that can blow out the rest of their competition this year can 100% still make the playoffs. So they're playing for a lot. Like, it's not like they're playing for nothing. This isn't Alabama with 2 losses where Nick Saban's telling them to play for their draft projection. This team is playing for the college football playoff. I think they'll be focused. I do think they might actually be out for blood. So with that in mind, Missouri's defense is a decent matchup. They can get pressure with 4. They can get after Hendon Hooker a little bit. That pass rush is pretty good. And then the back end, we've talked about Rakestraw before. Now you got Chris Abrams-Drain across from him versus, these Tennessee receivers. We've talked enough about Jalen Hyatt, but Cedric Tillman's coming back. This will be his 3rd game back. He didn't have a good game at all versus Georgia. Keely Ringo really locked him up. And I don't know if Missouri has that level of athletic specimen, but Abrams-Drain is a very good corner. I think he's got very good movement skills. He'll go and play in the NFL for sure. So like that matchup right there, along with that pass rush versus the Tennessee O-line, could give them a chance to maybe make it a little closer than one would hope as a Tennessee fan.
Yeah, Mizzou has to score points, and that's been a very big struggle for them this season. Their offense stinks. Their offense is not good. Tennessee favored by 20 points. That's a big number. You know how I feel with big numbers, Maddie. So I'm taking Mizzou in the 20 points. I'll give you some stats if you want before you make your pick. I didn't look at the stats before I made my pick. I'm not optimistic about this game, as you can tell. But the underdog has covered the spread in each of Missouri's last 7 games. So taking Missouri plus 20 seems pretty tasty with that number.
Oh, so this is tricky, right? You look through 20, I think is too much. Missouri, since the K-State game, has not let a team beat them by 20 or even really score enough points to possibly beat them by 20. That defense is playing well. On the flip side, you look at Tennessee. Yes, the Georgia game just happened. They would have beat Kentucky by over 20. They beat LSU by over 20. They didn't, and now then Pittsburgh, Florida, Alabama were all close games, but like they clearly can put it on teams that are not as physically talented as them. I don't think Missouri's is physically talented. 20's a lot. It scares me. If it was in Columbia, I would take the Tigers for sure. Being in Knoxville, after that, them playing for the college football playoff and needing to be impressive, I'm going to lay the 20 points with Tennessee. Give me Tennessee. I came into this anticipating Missouri, but then I talked myself out of it talking about the college football playoff, what Tennessee still has to play for. I swayed myself, Tucker. I swayed myself.
They have to win with style too, is the thing.
They do.
If they want to make the college football playoffs, they have got to win, and they've got to win big, which I anticipate that to happen. I'm sorry. I'm not bringing any hope into this game because I know that if it's the hope that kills you, I'm not going to do it. Okay, let's get into our watch schedule that we have here. The KCSM watch schedule for the noon slate. It's a real humdinger for you. Purdue travels to Champaign, Illinois to take on the Fighting Illini. That'll be on ESPN2. Purdue, Illinois. This is a fight for probably the Big Ten. What is it? East? West? Big Ten West?
I believe it's the West. I think Wisconsin is probably technically going to be there, but Illinois needs to win games. They're very clear at the top right now. I think Purdue might be close to out. Oh no, Purdue winning this game would do a lot for them. That would tie them with records with Illinois, and they would have. So yeah, no, this is a big game.
Big game for the standings. Yeah. I think Illinois is a game clear right now of Iowa and Wisconsin, which those two teams play this week as well. So Purdue gets a win. They put themselves right back into it.
Well, and then Illinois has a tiebreaker over both Wisconsin and Iowa, and I believe Minnesota. So like they kind of own the tiebreaker versus everyone. They need this game, and they are going to the Big Ten championship, right? If they win this one. Right. So big game for them. They're coming off a loss last week that they probably should have won. They shouldn't have lost. Was it Michigan State? Is that who they played last week? I feel like that's. I believe so, yeah. Sounds right. Yeah, they lost that. They had like 3 red zone turnovers. They could not put the ball in the paint. That was your first Illinois letdown game you've had all year that you've been I've been riding the Illini most of the season. They've been kind of a fun team in that disgusting Big Ten football. And so they've been a lot of fun. They finally let me down, but I think knowing they need this, they could lose that game. Michigan State's in the East. They could lose that game. It wasn't one that they had to have. Now this one they need. I like it. Purdue's been struggling. That offense was humming to start the year. They've been a little up and down here as of late. So it's kind of like 2 teams coming off of not their best performances. Both of them need a win here to come back on. Which style of football do you kind of trust to come out? The ugly Big Ten football or Purdue's somewhat high-flying offense, for what they have, just without SEC level athleticism to pair with it.
It's a high flying offense for the Big Ten. No, I think that this game is really interesting when you come and look at who is basically going to play either Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. Who's going to get rolled over by one of those two teams on their way to the college football playoff is what it ends up being. But no, this is a very much of a Big Ten game, a very Big Ten game. I think it's going to be an ugly game, but it could be one that's an ugly game that's fun to watch, if that makes sense. Just because there are some ramifications. So. Maddie, who are the prospects that you're looking forward to in this game?
So I've talked about him recently, but Devin Witherspoon, cornerback for Illinois, probably my favorite cornerback to watch. He's not the best cornerback in the class, but he might be the top man coverage guy. He will come up and hit somebody, good athlete. Like, he's a lot of fun. I picked him versus Nebraska a couple weeks ago. He essentially shut down Trey Palmer, who at the time was in the top 5 of receiving yards for college football, literally shut him down to like 1 catch for 4 yards. So this week, Devin Witherspoon against top 6 in receiving yards in the country, Charlie Jones from Purdue, who was once at Buffalo and then at Iowa, where they never threw him the ball. So he went to go hang out with his buddy, Aiden O'Connell at Purdue. He now, has 944 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year. He's been absolutely killing it in the Big Ten. Can Witherspoon replicate what he did against Jones like he did against Nebraska? Different type of receiver, but it'll be a fun matchup to watch. I'm leaning Witherspoon here, but I want to see, can Charlie Jones impress me a little bit and build on this really strong year?
Witherspoon's a fun guy to watch. He does like to chirp a little bit as well. He's a corner that likes to talk. We love corners that love to talk.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Illinois favored by 6.5 points. I don't have any nuggets for you. Don't have any fun stats. At home, favored by 6.5. A touchdown would win you your spread. What do you think, Maddie?
The Illini need this. Illinois needs this game to win, and both teams need it, but the Illinois needs it. They're coming off a loss that they probably shouldn't have had. Purdue did come off a loss as well, so both teams are in the same spot. I just think Illinois is a better team. When I think Big Ten football, as much as I hate their style of play, what wins in the Big Ten, unless you're Ohio State, is playing defense and running the ball. One of those two teams do both those things. The other one tries to throw to a wide receiver that only got offers to Buffalo coming out of high school. Like, if that's what your path to success is, give me the team that can run and play defense. Illinois minus the points.
I'm taking the same thing. Illinois minus the 6.5. That means they got to score a touchdown to cover. I feel pretty confident in that. I feel pretty confident. I don't think they'll have a repeat of last week, turning the ball over a lot in the red zone. I don't think so. But they got it out of their system. They're all right. Let's move into the afternoon game, the 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern time slot. Number 9 Alabama takes on number 11 Ole Miss. A very interesting matchup here. That game is in Oxford, Mississippi. This is the SEC primetime game that is on CBS. So you can throw that game on. It's a game I'll be watching on 2:30. So what are your initial thoughts on this matchup, Maddie?
Both Alabama, I guess, doesn't need it. Like, what does Alabama gain by getting this? They need, I guess, LSU drops a game, and then that puts Alabama back in the SEC championship. But like, even what does that do for them, right? So there's not a whole lot to play for Alabama right now. Like, yeah, there's the pride of winning the SEC West, I guess it is, and going and getting beat down by Georgia or somehow Tennessee. Like, there's not a lot there for Alabama to play for. Whereas Ole Miss sitting with one loss, they have a chance. Like, they have a chance to actually do something. They're coming off a bye week. Technically, that motivational factor should be a little on their side. If there was ever a chance for there to be a letdown in Alabama, this might be it. Like, you're not supposed to let losses affect you twice. Alabama's been really good at not doing that. Over the past 2 seasons, you can see losses affect them the next week. They've always won them. They haven't lost the back-to-back yet, but they do seem to affect him coming off of it now. So this is a game I got my eye on as a potential upset. And Lane Kiffin off a bye week, scheming up stuff. And that's some fun stuff there.
Yeah. This is a very interesting number 9, number 11 game, right? A game that I don't know if in my recent memory, I'm looking it up right now. I can't remember Alabama being ranked like this low ever. And like ever since I've been paying attention to college football, it's been a while. And even I was just like trying to see when the last time. I mean, they had 2 losses in 2019, 2 losses in 2014. But I think that the second loss came in the Sugar Bowl. the second loss in 2019. I mean, they won the Citrus Bowl. So, I mean, they don't lose 2 games very often, Nick Saban's Alabama team. So it's been a minute. I guess they did in 2021 but they lost in the college football championship. So
Right.
so they finished the season with 1 loss essentially. You're looking at a team that is in uncharted territory for what it has been. So how they respond is going to be interesting. That LSU Alabama game was a phenomenal game. Great game to watch. I didn't expect it to go the way that it did, but that's kind of how college football has been this season. And you're very much right that they need this game to kind of get in that SEC West conversation right now. LSU at the top of 5-1 in the conference, Ole Miss 4-1 in the conference. And LSU has played both Ole Miss and Alabama, so it looks like they've got a pretty solid grasp on that SEC West slot. And who they'll probably play Georgia, because they will play Georgia because Georgia and Tennessee have already played. Georgia will be the representative for the SEC East. So that'll be an interesting, fun game. So, Maddie, looking at this matchup still, what are your prospects to watch?
I think for this one, the prospects I'm going to focus on are Ole Miss doesn't have the same like wide receivers they've had over the past couple of years, especially with Lane Kiffin. That's why it's been such an awesome Lane Kiffin year. Is he's just fully embraced it. Like, okay, I have great running backs. Let's just run the ball. And so they don't have a ton of receivers, but they do have one guy, Jonathan Mingo, 6'2", 220 pounds. He's more of a yards after the catch kind of guy, but he's got build up speed. So he can get by you vertically and then make some plays. So he'll line up outside. He'll line up in the slot. We've talked a lot about Alabama's outside corners this year, and, they've been good, bad, up and down. But I think arguably their best defensive back plays in their slot, kind of plays that star role. Brian Branch, he's a junior, but he's playing that nickel spot. Sometimes he's a safety, sometimes he's a corner. When Mingo kicks inside, it'll be up to Branch to kind of go in there, shut him down a little bit at the line of scrimmage. Branch will also play a huge role in stopping Ole Miss's run game, which they get into it in a lot of different ways. So I think both these guys could be a key. If Mingo can hit a couple big plays, that's going to help open up the run game for Ole Miss. And conversely, if Branch can shut down Mingo on those big plays or just start getting his nose in there in the run game, like these two guys maybe aren't the first names that pop up, but they could play a huge role in how this game ends up playing out.
Crimson Tide favored by 11.5 points. Big spread going on the road. As you got a home dog in this one, and Ole Miss has covered the spread in 8 of its last 9 November games against AP ranked teams. 11.5 is a lot of points, Maddie, for a home dog. What are your thoughts on this?
It is a lot of points, and I don't think Ole Miss's defense has been great, but they've also had a long time since they got a week off. They just came off their bye week where they just getting worn down, and especially a team that has a high-powered offense that can score quickly. That's a lot of snaps. I'm interested to see if they're a little refreshed coming out of it. On the other side, Alabama just physically bullied them last year. They said, hey, we're going to hold the ball. I think they ran the ball over 50 times against Ole Miss last year in the game when they blew them out. So whoever runs the ball better wins this game. And that sounds silly, but like these are two teams that I think should try to run the ball against each other. Whoever runs the ball better wins. We're dealing with running the football. Take the team getting points. Give me Ole Miss plus the points. When you run the ball a lot, usually you don't get blowouts. I'll take Ole Miss getting the points at home. That's too many points when I think two teams are going to try to pound the rock.
I think so too. And when you talk about a number 9 versus a number 11 matchup, 10 and 11 when it comes to BC or not the BCS rankings. Listen to me. To the college football playoff rankings, it's too many points. Too many points at home for a home dog. Nothing I love more than a home dog. And never bet the under in a Pac-12 game. I'll throw that as a rule. Number 2, take the home dog. I'm taking Ole Miss minus or plus the 11.5. Man, I saw that line and I kind of thought that was crazy off the top because I was like, well, 11.5 at home. That seems like a lot, but here it is. This is the game that we're looking forward to. I think this is the best game on the whole slate. You correct me if I'm wrong, Maddie, but number 4 TCU travels to number 18 Texas. Texas looked like a pretty salty ball club against Kansas State. That game is in Austin, Texas on ABC. This is your primetime 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Maddie?
Man, we could have just done this whole show on this game, I think. I have so many thoughts here. First and foremost, Quentin Johnston for TCU left the game against Texas Tech. Is he playing? Is he not? It sounds like he's on track to try, but if he's not a full go or if he's not able to get out there, things get a lot harder for TCU. He's their one receiving weapon that they can just trust to go win. And we've seen that as they've gone through Big 12 play, whether it was the K-State game, the KU game, like he's kind of won them some games. Besides that, it's a lot of scheming guys open. It's a lot of Max Duggan kind of running around making plays. So his health is big here. And on that same note, Texas, quality defense, love them up front. The secondary, pretty shaky. There was a lot of open receivers for K-State to throw the ball to. TCU will not only make those same plays, but they will turn them into big plays because Duggan's a better thrower of the football than Martinez, and the weapons are still going to be better with or without Quentin Johnston. So I think there's a lot of yards and a lot of points from that TCU offense that is available. And then again, on the flip side, TCU's defense in the first half, bad. TCU's defense in the second half, been really good. How many points can Texas, who's been a very hot starting team, put up before the clamps get dropped on them? And what does that look like? Can they be up by 20 points or are they going to be up by 7 points going into halftime? It's like, that's been a big thing. Texas is blowing leads. TCU's coming back. TCU's slinging the ball all over the yard. Texas has given up free yards all over the yard. It seems like a really good matchup for TCU to come back and win this game as long as Texas doesn't put a 3-score lead on the table going into halftime.
Right. They've got to kind of weather that first storm. They got to weather I believe it's the first and third quarters that they're pretty good in, Texas, which you talk about basically scripts is what that is when you talk about it. So Texas has been good in those situations. TCU, man, they find ways to win football games. And that's what I think is TCU. They haven't played pretty in a lot of these games. Kansas game was a gritty win. West Virginia game, gritty win. They're beating teams, but they're not winning with the style points. And maybe that's what hurt them, right? Maybe that's what hurt them when it comes to the college football playoff is their style points weren't necessarily there. They can talk about how much that doesn't matter, but it does. It does matter how you beat teams when it comes to the college football playoff, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I think that when you look at the implications for the Big 12 championship game, it's crucial for Texas. It's crucial for them to get this win. I mean, you can pretty much pencil in TCU at this point. They have a 2-game lead. They're 2 games clear of everybody in the Big 12. Texas wins it. They've got their 2 losses. They've got the leg up, and especially if Baylor loses, they've got the tiebreaker over Kansas State, and then they'll play Baylor later on in the year to kind of determine. They've already got the tiebreaker over Kansas State. The Baylor game might not determine who goes, but it very well could, because every game in the Big 12 this year is a coin flip. Like, I think every game in this conference is just like this conference is so. I think it's so deep. It's not necessarily the best conference, but every team can beat every team, and week in and week out. And I think that's kind of what's a little bit dangerous for anybody from the Big 12 making it into the college football playoff. Right? Is just how these teams stack up against each other. Very interesting matchup. I do think it favors TCU a little bit when you start to look at the team's strengths and the other team's weaknesses. I am excited to see how TCU's offense does against this Texas defense, who will seem to let things happen. I'm not saying that they let the team score, but they let teams get yards on them, which. I mean, the Kansas State had some good offense against them, couldn't get it done ultimately in the end. But I think the difference is TCU has found ways to win football games, and that's been the biggest part for TCU.
No, I'm with you. And we kind of touched on it at the beginning of the game versus how the end's going to go. I'm trusting the Frogs here until they prove to me they can't lose, that they won't lose the game. I'm going to believe in them. And then on the other hand, Sarkisian just gives every team Texas plays a chance to claw back in and have a chance at victory. And TCU's the one team that I trust to come back and take that win. TCU beats them on that final drive last week versus K-State, where K-State couldn't. TCU comes back and scores there, and Texas was dominating that game, and then they just completely collapsed in the second half to that final drive. So I'm with you with TCU. Prospect-wise to watch, I mean, there's a bunch of guys. I'm going to go with some guys I haven't talked about just yet. Kendre Miller, running back for TCU. Ooh, in his career, he averages 7 yards per carry. This year is he's had the most volume, so it's dropped down to just a 6.6 yards per carry this year on how many carries are we at? And just 153 carries. This guy's an explosive playmaker in TCU's backfield. Wow. He's hitting big plays left and right. I think Texas's defensive line, front seven's pretty good. I can list off 800 guys. You have DeMarvin Overshawn. You got Tavondre Sweat, Ovi Agafu, Moro Ajomo. All these guys are going to play a role in stopping him. The biggest guy, Keandre Coburn, 350-pound nose tackle, but they play him as like that weird Pac-12 or Oklahoma of the past with Alex Grinch style where he's just slanting 24/7. He's just slanting one way or the other. When he's going the right way, he blows the play up. When he goes the wrong way, it's kind of difficult. So can TCU take advantage of that, or is his size and athleticism just going to be too much and Miller won't be able to find any room? As explosive as TCU is throwing the ball, if they hit explosive runs, I don't see how Texas can slow them down at all. If they can't, then things get a little bit dicier here.
Texas favored by 7.5 points at home, favored by more than a touchdown at home. This game, you heard us. We think it's going to be close. TCU has covered the spread in each of its last 5 games against teams from Texas. This is DFW's Big 12 team. That's their hashtag, DFW Big 12 team. Maddie, what are your thoughts on this line here?
Okay, so we spent a lot talking about how TCU matches up well. Texas has the best player out there in Bijan Robinson. And their offensive line is good. It's a lot of young guys, but their left tackle, whose name I don't have pulled up right now, he's a freshman. He's a stud. Bijan Robinson, stud. Roshan Johnson, stud. Like, they can run the ball on TCU most likely. So their path to winning is holding the ball, feeding their running backs, and not asking Quinn Ewers to go head-to-head with TCU's passing attack. That's all fine and dandy, and that probably gets you a lead going into halftime potentially. But the second half, you're trusting this Texas team who's blowing leads left and right to not let TCU storm back. You're trusting them to be able to run the football all game long. And even if they have success, are they going to win by more than a touchdown? I don't think so. Give me the Frogs. I mean, I would take the Frogs money line. I think TCU is a better football team in general, but getting 7.5, that's such a solid bet that that's the one you got to ride with.
Frogs money line plus 230. So like you're making some change there if you place down some money. I'll just run the math here real quick. $5 bet will net you $16.50 payout. So I mean, you're winning $11 there, $11.50. That's not good. That's not too shabby if you're riding with the Frogs like we are. I'm taking the 7.5 points for TCU. That's Tuck's lock. I'm throwing the Tuck's lock on the TCU 7.5. I think that number is just too good not to take. So let's dive into our wild card games, Maddie. I'll start with mine first. College Game Day is at TCU, Texas. That is where College Game Day is at. Where some people wanted College Game Day to go is my wild card game. That is UCF at Tulane. That game is going to take place at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central Time in New Orleans on ESPN2. You can throw that one on the old second screen while you're watching Alabama and Ole Miss. Listen, a very interesting matchup. Tulane been a pretty good team this year. Tulane's been pretty solid. I believe this is really, I need to pull up the American standings here real quick. I believe, this is for the top of it. Tulane 5-0 in conference, UCF 4-1 in conference. So this is do they have a championship game? Do you know off the top of your head if they do?
This is a play-in game to play Cincinnati.
Good point. Cincinnati 4-1 in that as well. When you start to look at those standings, but ramifications for the conference, lots of things on the line here. Tulane favored by 1.5 at home. I will give my pick after Maddie tells us who he's looking forward in this game.
Okay, so UCF has some offensive weapons that I like a little bit more than this guy, but they don't seem to always get the run. And I think the most intriguing matchup, we're going to go with tight end Keymore Gamble from UCF. He was an athlete. I think he was kind of set to be the Kyle Pitts replacement of Florida. And then he had a pretty decent year finally last year at Florida. Transfers to UCF during the offseason with all the coaching changes. They haven't really figured out the best way to get him involved, but you can still see the potential there to move on to the next level. So this could be a game against this Tulane defense where they might need him a little bit. They might need to throw the ball a little bit around. And I don't know if actually Jason something Plumlee is going to be able to play. And he can't throw. So if the backup's in there, that probably increases the chance for Gamble to get some run. So there's a chance this could be a game for him. The problem is the other side. Tulane's linebacker Dorian Williams stud. He is all over the field. He is like watching Darius Leonard play at SC State or wherever he was. I think it was SC State back in he was coming out. It's like watching him, but at a higher level of competition. He rushes. He plays sideline to sideline. He drops in coverage. He's a long, kind of skinny linebacker, but he's just everywhere at all time. Like, I really do think if you want to pick a linebacker from a non-Power 5 school, it's going to be something at the next level. I think Dorian Williams is the guy you got to kind of ID right now. So this matchup of UCS rushing attack plus Gamble out there versus him could really test him and give him a chance to put some good tape out there on the field.
Top 25 matchup in the AP and in the college football playoff poll. Both of these teams are ranked. I believe UCF is 22. I have to look this up here real quick. I've got the tab up. Tulane's number 17, which ranked ahead of Kansas State, by the way, who they beat earlier this year. In the college football playoff rankings, UCF at 22. I believe that is very close to where they are in the AP as well, with Tulane at 16 in the AP and 22 for UCF. So very close to the similar rankings. I'm going to take Tulane at home minus the 1.5. I think that they can get it done, and they can win by more than a point. They've got to win by a 2-point conversion or a field goal. I like it there. Big game for the American Athletic Conference in determining who will be the top dog going into the conference championship game.
All right. So for my wild card game, we got the shirt on. We're ready. We got the Washington Huskies traveling to Eugene, Oregon. So number 25 Washington Huskies going to number 6 Oregon on the road, 7:30 prime time on Fox in Oregon. Tough place to play, especially against the fighting Bo Nixes. This is a Bo Nix Heisman odds climbing. This is a big game for both teams. Washington's trying to stay. I don't really think their path to the Pac-12 championship is very clear. They definitely need some help, but this is a rivalry game. There's no trophy, but these two teams do not like each other whatsoever. They actually get pretty feisty at the stadiums. This is like becomes an SEC level rivalry, even though there's no trophy. It's kind of crazy. So Washington, high-powered offense, zero defense, like just absolutely zero defense. Oregon, high-powered offense, almost zero defense. Their run defense is all right because they got bodies up front. They have some defensive linemen, they have girth, they have good athletes for it, but they still can't stop the pass. I expect a lot of points in this game, whole lot of points back and forth. You got two quarterbacks who have played really well this year, two quarterbacks who have made some mind-numbing decisions at times too. This game might come down to, do you get good Bo Nix or bad Bo Nix? Do you get good Michael Penix, bad Michael Penix? Because that's kind of what you're dealing with. Both teams have enough weapons to score versus bad defenses. So offensive shootout for Huskies. Prospects to watch. My favorite Washington receiver, the guy that's been the most productive this year, is Rome Adunes. He's about 6'2", a little over 200 pounds. He's kind of become the go-to guy throughout the year. Jalen McMillan's a little bit faster, kind of the dynamic guy, but they've struggled to hit some deep shots with him. So Adunes has kind of become the de facto number one, and it really does show. He's good after the catch, getting downfield. But Christian Gonzalez, a Colorado transfer at cornerback, 6'2", 205 pounds, one of the better man coverage corners in this class, playing for Oregon. Really good press technique up at the line of scrimmage. He will get physical. He will make you earn everything you get. I think that matchup is going to be between, I don't know if Adunes will come out this year. Since Penix is leaving, maybe he should, but he's got eligibility left. Gonzalez most likely will to capitalize on what should be great draft stock. So I think those two guys going at it could be a big matchup. Do you have any takes on this game? Are you going to root against my Huskies talk?
I'm not going to root against the Huskies. What I do think is really interesting though is the Bo Nix hype. He's at plus 1,200 on DraftKings for the Heisman Trophy. CJ Stroud and Hendon Hooker are their two clear.
Hendon Hooker can't win. That'd be no. Hendon, if you have a bet on Hendon Hooker, if you're considering doing Heisman bets, don't do it on Hooker. You're wasting money. He cannot win.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that, but that doesn't keep me from thinking that he's the best player in the college football.
He just can't win.
CJ Stroud plus 140 though, like you're not making any money on that sucker. Blake Corum plus 750, and then you kind of have like a drop off after that, right? You got Caleb Williams at plus 900, Steady B the fourth at 1,000, and then Bo Nix at plus 1,200. Drake May, maybe he should be getting some more conversation. We'll see. Drake May lay the money down on there, but no, Oregon is such an interesting football team to me just because they did get the brakes blown off of them by Georgia. And then they went into the Pac-12 and started blowing the brakes off of people. So then you're just like, wait, what this doesn't add up. Like, this doesn't add up. How are they this good? But I feel like this is a tricky game for Oregon to play. I do. I think it's a tricky game for them.
Yeah, spitting just Heisman stuff, touch on it real quick. If you're betting on the Heisman and you want to bet Stroud because it's the safest bet, like I understand it, but if you go ahead and split your money and put half of it on Drake May, half of it on Bo Nix, I think if either one of those teams wins their conference with only one loss, that'd be UNC winning out and beating Clemson, Oregon winning out and beating USC or UCLA again. I think Nix or May, just the way things are going right now and what I see about Stroud and how difficult it's going to be, I think that's a better bet, especially given those odds. Just split the money that you would put on Stroud, put it on Nix and May. I think that's where I would go right now anyway. And I'm also below 500 on bets for the year, so do with that what you will. Picking the spread, Oregon favored by 13. Too many points for a rivalry game when I don't think either team is actually going to get that many stops. Yeah, Penix could throw 3 interceptions in the first quarter and completely tank Washington, but this also seems like a game where maybe Oregon gets up, Penix plays not great for a stretch, but they backdoor cover it, don't lose by 2 full scores, because again, Oregon can't stop a good passing attack, and Washington has one of those. I think it's a high-scoring game. I think 13 is just a few too many points. Huskies to cover.
All right, there we go. UW to cover. Love a good Washington corner. Love a good Washington football game. Trent McDuffie getting back in action for the Chiefs. That's been good. I saw, Maddie, this is off topic. I looked up Trent McDuffie's stats on Pro Football Focus. 2 targets all year for Trent McDuffie.
Yes, both passes defended against the Cardinals. No, I believe he knocked it away, and then he definitely did against Austin Hooper for the Titans. So yeah, both targets defended.
Love a good UW corner, and we know that the Chiefs do as well. So, Maddie, thank you for joining me, recapping all of these games. Not recapping, previewing all of these games. Got a good slate this week. I think it's a sneaky good slate. Last week's slate was good. This week, I'd call it sneaky good. So make sure that you are watching all of these games. Maddie, any final thoughts?
No, I think that's it. Let's get some purple wins, get some TCU action. Let's get K-State for the wallet since I bet on them, and then get some Huskies going. So we got to get the W's for the purple teams.
Purple teams indeed. Purple teams unite. That seems to be our theme, as we like to cheer for the purple teams. So that is going to do it for this week's edition of KCSNU Kickoff. Make sure to like the video if you do enjoy this content. Subscribe to the KCSNU YouTube channel for Kansas, for Mizzou, for Kansas State as well. All 3 of those schools, we're getting into bowl season. It's getting down to the nitty-gritty. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our content there. Also getting into basketball season. We'll have basketball content as well. Maddie and I won't be doing the basketball stuff. We're just going to stick with college football. That's our lane, and we're going to stay in it. So appreciate you watching all the way to the end. So until next time, we'll talk to you guys next week.
No fake sports.